Hey everyone, welcome to the program WRSA Radio. I am your host G1. As always, I hope you're having a good year so far. It is 2024 and we wasted no time starting off with yet more evidence of the collapse. New Year's is a liminal time, a time of changes, a time of promises and looking into the future. This year, I got the distinct impression that very few people were really celebrating the new year. Of course, there were, big public celebrations and those kinds of things that they were put on TV. But that's not really what I mean. I mean, really looking forward to the new year. I get the impression that people are kind of dreading the future. But the normies are noticing. Normies are posting memes about 2024 that signal awareness of the place we are in and the danger that is coming. And I think that's significant, at least in my mind it is. Now, this Christmas I had, the family time that you normally associate with the holidays. And I had the familiar, political discussions with some of the relatives that I actually look forward to those. Some of you may not. You all have had these conversations, and some of you may not look forward to them, but I actually do. And I got the feel from my relatives who, they're run-of-the-mill, slightly left normies who, they consume mainstream media for their really any information that they get. I got the impression from them that they're clearly not happy with a lot of things going on with this current political administration. And when we began talking about the election in 2024, the impression was that they were convinced that the outcome was going to be in question whoever is declared the winner, and that will lead to violence. And I can't argue with that really at all. And that's kind of interesting to me that they would come to that conclusion. But I can't argue with it. And it's too early to get into any kind of speculation, especially on the main platform I post these videos on, because that might lead to the channel getting banned. So we'll move away from that aspect of the topic. And I will say that I do expect violence regardless of the result, which is assuming that we make it to the election without a summer of love, if you want to call it that, like we had in 2020. And that's not a good assumption. Let me be clear there. But at any rate, I was angry about something from the conversations that I had, and it was enough to make me think about it for a couple of hours on the drive home, and a few days later and whatnot. So it's been something that's kind of been going through my head, and I wanted to bring it up as part of this episode. Really, it's the meat of this episode. While I say that the normies are beginning to notice, it is clear to me that many are still holding on to the old programming. And so they're in this odd cognitive state where they see reality unfolding, but it's not comporting with what they believe to be true. And that's a bad thing, but it's normal. Generally, people absorb this and they, kind of adjust their beliefs in a slow fashion, which causes them the least bit of discomfort. But that's not really likely to happen here, because the reality is changing at such a tempo that they're having a hard time keeping up. So what they're doing is kind of the most dangerous method of dealing with this dissonance. They're ignoring reality and denying that it's real. And they're focusing just on the absurdity. And this is going to cause them further discomfort and processing problems, and eventually is going to lead to a significant number of normies who simply shut down. They will stop paying attention, shutting off all of their information feeds and turning just completely internally to deal with this continuing day-to-day absurdity. That's the obstacle we face. Many people say, well, just forget about them. Screw them. Let them go and let them seethe in the soup that they have made. They're responsible for most of this. And that's one way to look at it. And I don't fault people for feeling that way at all. And I've been of that mind myself off and on for some time now. I have, however, accepted that we need a big chunk of these people. We need to save as many as we can because we have to build numbers. We need the expertise. We need the people to do things. We have to bring some of these people along. And that's what this show is really about. It's what my goal is and what I've been trying to do this whole time. I'm here not to tell you things you already know. I'm here to help you explain things to your normie friends in such a way that it starts them along the path. I want you to point them to this show and say, listen to this guy and how he explains things and what he covers. And I know some people get upset that I don't say specific things on this show, specific topics, certain groups or certain things that I don't go into, and I get that. And please understand that I am working within the confines of the platforms that I post on. And like it or not, there is censorship of the message. If you drop right into the deep end of the pool and go fully into the span of all, that it doesn't accomplish things. It doesn't accomplish anything. What it does is two things. One, as I mentioned above, people deal with that dissonance differently. If the difference between what they believe is reality and what you tell them is too vast, they'll shut down and they'll call you crazy. They'll stop listening to your message. And two, it causes the platforms to shut down the whole channel, and then no message is getting out at all. And the people who think you're crazy, then they use that shutdown to justify in their minds the assumption that you're crazy. So it's an all-around fail. They completely shut out all of the message. That's not how we want to do things, okay? And that's why I point people over to the WRSA homepage and to Gab to follow myself and Concerned American over there who runs the WRSA homepage. There's much more free conversation on that platform, and yes, some of it is wild and uncomfortable, but we are in a time of discomfort. We are in a time when madness seems like the norm and absurdity is the coin of the realm, which gets me back to the thing I was contemplating on the drive home from the Christmas party. This week we had some major stories breaking. Some of them have been getting all of the attention. The major one being the release of the Epstein documents that happened yesterday, and it's been talked about for a little bit already. And there's a lot of information in those documents. And what they say, who they implicate, and all the tawdry details and of who liked what and who liked to do what with whom. And I'm not going to delve into those, but let me explain why. Very often when something like this breaks, we see everyone kind of gravitate to this news and everyone begins to talk about it, and the topic trends on social media. And inevitably it generates, a counterpoint or maybe a counter narrative. And people begin to discuss that, after they've worn out the original aspect of the topic itself. And at some point someone will realize and express a concern. They'll ask, well, if this topic is being talked about openly, what is going on that the powers that be want to distract us from? If it's a certain type of topic, that's, it's just a natural thing for people to jump to. But it's always a good question. We should always be asking that. It's a safe way to view things in a world where everything is a deception. It's a sound way to operate. But the problem is that statement that I just made, in a world where everything is a deception. Because that's the issue here. This is the thing that kind of got me a little angry. We can look at a story like the Epstein documents and we can say, well, they want us to look at this to distract us from this other story. And then, we can name off story after story. You pick one. Is it the immigration problem? Is the violence that comes with that immigration, the inflation problem, and the crisis that comes with home ownership or buying groceries that comes with inflation? Is it the confrontation that's going on in the Red Sea and the impact that that's going to have on inflation and supply, or the danger it possesses to spreading the war with Israel to the broader Middle East? It could be any one of those things right now. And there are people saying that those stories are distractions from the Epstein documents. And the problem is that's kind of all wrong. Because it's all a distraction. Every one of those stories is focused on, in some way or fashion, in order to distract us from the real state of the world. Now, they are all facets of that overall state. They are small windows into the larger picture. But you need to recognize that when you focus in on those individual dots, you're missing the greater view of the whole painting. It's like a Monet, an impressionist artwork. Many small dots of color that, when viewed from a distance, produce a larger, more distinct picture. Now, let me be clear here in case I'm misunderstood. I'm not suggesting that you ignore these stories, nor am I suggesting that that those stories don't matter, or that there are not smaller distractions and narratives going on. All that's happening. What I'm saying is that the many stories and misdirections paint a larger, more important, and honestly, a more terrifying picture. Well, what is that picture? Well, I'm afraid I can't really tell you, because it's open to your own understanding and interpretation. I can't tell you exactly what it looks like, but I can tell you what elements that I think the picture should include. What all of this should be telling you is that the world is not as it seems. Much of what you think you know is wrong. It's why certain things don't make sense, why historical behaviors don't predict future behaviors. What it should be telling you is that there are many forces in the world that are unseen and concealed in darkness. They have motivations that we can speculate on, but we don't know for sure. So your picture should include a shadow or a fog that conceals those unseen forces. I can tell you that your picture should include a city, perhaps made of stone with walls around it, and those walls are being undermined and collapsed from below, which is showing how the old order, the old established social and societal order, is being destroyed. Civilization is being transformed, and the great destruction is happening. And many people are not going to be with us in the near future. We can only speculate as to how that will occur, but I'm certain that it is going to happen. So your picture should include a symbolic mass death. And your picture should also include much in the way of natural disasters, because the very world itself is going through a cycle of upheaval and change. Not the global nonsense change that they're pushing on you, but a real cosmic level or solar system level change. Natural forces that man has no real understanding of, let alone an impact on. So your picture should include fire and earthquakes and floods and those kinds of things. I think you're beginning to get the picture that I'm painting here. I'm not even the first person to paint that kind of picture, of course. We have many, many examples of it throughout history. And that is why I said that this was open to your own interpretation, because many people will place, different significance on this based off of their beliefs or their background, their upbringing, their knowledge, what have you. This is a far greater happening than people are understanding. And let me stay on that for the normies, because I know that there are a lot of people who will hear this and they'll shut down, just like I described earlier in the show. This guy's talking about Armageddon. He's just some kind of Bible thumper, and that means he's crazy. I can hear you through the internet already. No, let me say no. You're mistaken there. But let's consider something. History is filled with the rise and fall of empires and civilizations. It's the natural order of things. One could call that the way of the universe or the will of God or whatever you want to call it. It doesn't change that reality. We have an objective historical facts to demonstrate that. It's a universal law of entropy. What is organized and material will decay into unorganized and immaterial. Cultures throughout history have told us that the earth has gone through many phases, and those rise and collapse at various intervals depending on, which mythology you're reading or history you're reading. And again, there's archaeological evidence to support those assertions from those historical documents. So given all of that, ask yourself the following. If our leaders of the world, those shadowy figures and their agents, understand this, if they were provided evidence that these cycles were turning and that one or more of these cycles were coming to an end, if they came to understand that those cycles come to an end and then they begin again, but before that rebirth or that re-beginning, there is a period of mass destruction. Ask yourself, do you think they would warn you? Do you think that they would tell you or me or any of us what was happening? What makes you think that they would lift a finger to save you, to help us prepare or help us understand these things? Don't you think that they would conceal this from us? Don't you think they would do whatever they could to ensure their own survival so that they would pass into this rebirth part of the cycle and survive? Now understand, I'm not talking about something like an asteroid hitting the Earth or something like that. Maybe it is. I don't know. I'm just talking about one of those natural things. It's just the way things work. Civilizations rise, civilizations collapse. It happens at regular intervals, give or take a few years. And if it does, if it's something that can be tracked and predicted, then it stands to reason that they would have learned of this, and they would know this, and they would be getting ready for it. And from what we know of them, they will be getting ready to take advantage of it and rebuild the new society in a shape that best suits them. Now, I could be completely wrong here. But what angers me, what makes me concerned, is that far too few people are looking at this greater picture. Maybe that's not what your picture looks like, but let me restate something that I say on this show often, but if you're new, you probably haven't heard it. It does not matter if you and I believe something to be true. If they believe it to be true and it motivates them, when I say them, I'm talking about those elites, those powers that be. it motivates them in their actions, then we need to understand it and we need to act accordingly because they are making the decisions that impact us. Okay, that is a heck of a way to start the year. So we shall see how it unfolds, and we will cover it here on the show. I promise it will not be all apocalypse all the time, but we will go where it takes us. So can't tell you what the show is going to be about even next week, but we shall see. That is all I got time for today. Like and subscribe. Come see us over on Gab and the Mothership, and I will see you on the next episode.